The show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM650.
Welcome back to Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. I'm Sterling Fox, joined by Tony Gioventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia. And our guest this week is Strata lawyer Adrienne Murray from White Rock. Adrienne, lovely to have you back with us. We're right on the precipice here. We're going to buy one of these spiffy new apartments downtown in one of these swanky condo developments. So now we're there, and we're talking, of all things, parking spaces and storage lockers. And with the kind of price tag, some of the people are asking for condominium units in this town. People have got to be going, why were you worrying about parking spots and storage lockers? Good Lord, you're asking close to $1 million for an apartment. Obviously, you're going to get a storage locker and a parking spot. Come on, give your head a shake. Well, Adrienne, that's not the case at all, is it? It's not even close to the case.
No, absolutely, not close. There may not be enough parking in the building. You may not get one, but even if you do, and there is a parking space that's going to come with your unit, the real question is, what's the status of that parking, and do I have any permanence in terms of use? I mean, there was a case a while ago where a gentleman bought a strata lot. The developer promised 2 parking spaces. The owner parked in the 2 parking spaces, right, and the strata council came along and said, oh, sorry, you only get 1 parking space. They're common property, and we will reallocate that second parking space to another owner. The owner said, well, I've negotiated with the developer. I'm perfectly fine. Off they went to court. The court agreed with the Strata Corporation.
Really?
The property was common property. It was within the control of the Strata Council, and Mr. Hill ended up with 1 parking space.
Even though he had been promised, looking him straight in the eye with a firm handshake attached, that he was going to get 2 spots from the developer who sold him the place.
A little more than a handshake. There was a little money in that hand.
Oh, I'm sure there was. Now, was there legal language supporting the sale of 2 parking spots to this buyer?
Well, the language in the contract indicated that Mr. Hill would have the use of 2 parking spaces. But the fundamental is, how is that area designated? And if it's common property, as I mentioned earlier, everyone owns it, everyone gets to use it, and it's the Strata Council that has the right to assign it. So when the developer tells me I'm going to get a parking space, my next question is, how is it designated? If the developer tells me it's part of my strata lot, well, and that's possible. It doesn't happen that often, but it might be possible, or it certainly is possible.
The apartment comes with a spot.
And it is designated on the plan as part of my strata lot. Well, then I own it. It comes with my title. I don't need to ask any other questions.
Okay.
If the next thing that the developer tells me is that it's limited common property, we have common property and strata lots, and common property can be designated as limited common property. That means it's limited for the exclusive use of that particular strata lot. So if I can look on a strata plan and see that this parking space is limited common property, often abbreviated LCP,
okay,
limited common property for the strata lot I'm buying, again, think of it as carved in stone. If it's going to be on the strata plan, we need a unanimous vote of all the owners to take it off the plan. So I'm going to have the permanent use, and not only myself, but anybody that owns my strata lot is going to have the right to use. You don't technically own it,
right,
but you'll have the right to use that parking space forever.
So, Tony, what we're talking about here is long horizon at all times. You get real excited about moving into a lovely new apartment with a fantastic view and all the latest toys, but you may not live there forever. So you've got to think in terms not only of the amenities that are provided to you as the current occupant and owner, but at departure time, how much of what I've come to assume is mine is actually mine to sell to the next person. And it's not always what you think it is it?
Well, and you're not selling common property or limited common property. The limited common property is designated on the strata plan to show that it's for your exclusive use. But you're selling your strata lot. With your strata lot comes an assignment of the limited common property for use.
Okay, so it's close to owning it, right?
Well, it's having the exclusive designation of it.
Right.
But limited common property, if it's created by the developer, as Adrienne said, requires a unanimous vote to change it or undo it. But some strata corporations also later on, once they've established and figured out all the parking, will actually create limited common property as well. If it started out being common property, the strata corporation can do things like assign a limited common property parking space to each strata lot. And strata corporations can do that by 3/4 vote, but they can undo it by 3/4 vote. So if you're a subsequent buyer, it would be in your interest, if you were concerned about your parking, to find out how that limited common property was created in the first place.
Now,
and because that could, if the strata corporation did it, they can also undo it.
right.
So they could change it. If the developer does it, it can only be undone with a unanimous vote of the corporation. So you're pretty secure that it's not going to happen without your consent.
Adrienne, it's spring almost, and lots of people enjoy getting out and house hunting and going through new units and checking the latest bells and whistles. And of course, the Home and Garden Show is on this weekend. It's that time of year. So off we go, looking at all of these new options and considering lifestyle choices. And what I'm trying to get to here is the types of property. You talk about LCP, or limited common property, which allows a parking spot to be allocated to my condo unit pretty much indefinitely. But the choice, or the one I would want the most, would be that parking spot is private property, as in mine, right? Is that the ultimate designation?
Well, it happens so rarely that you're going to see it to be part of your strata lot that I wouldn't really factor it into being a preferred choice, because you're not really going to realistically see that in most of the developments that we see.
Okay.
So
would these sales reps at these new places that we're now going out and enjoying spring weather, and so what about this and what about that? Do these reps have the answers to the kinds of questions you're saying? All right, tell me about parking, and tell me about how my parking spot would be designated. Is a sales rep equipped with that information?
Well, they should be. They should be, and if they can't answer the question very quickly, I think you want to be talking to somebody else in the display unit.
Okay.
Because again, this information should be in the disclosure statement as well. So if you're not getting it to be part of your strata lot, you're not getting it designated as limited common property, it's common property. Then the question is, well, how's the developer guaranteeing my use of it?
Well, yeah.
They may tell you that the developer has leased the parking to itself and is assigning the use of the parking stall to you for a 99-year lease.
Okay.
So that's the other option that we see, and we see that very frequently with a lot of the major developers in the Lower Mainland, actually throughout British Columbia, that their means of allocating and controlling the parking and storage is to lease it to usually a related company, and have that related company then assign it to the buyers as they come along. Now, if you have a lease, you've at least, there may be questions down the road about validity, but we don't need to get into that.
Right.
I think it's your next best option to limited common property is to have that developer's lease and to have it clearly set out that you are leasing or subleasing a parking stall 22.
Right. Now, Tony, again, back to the shopping, the lifestyle choices, the changes. We're downsizing. We don't need all that house and yard and all that stuff anymore. But we're going to take a smaller place with a nice view and all the rest of it, but we're not going to give up our cars, plural. She has hers, I have mine. We're going to need 2 spots. In some of these downtown locations that you and Adrienne have been describing, that sounds like it could be a bit of a problem, more so perhaps than you might have anticipated.
It may not be possible, or it may be expensive, one of the two. What you want to ensure when you're negotiating the assignment of the parking is make sure that to start with, you don't take anyone's word for anything.
Okay.
Right? All kinds of promises are made in sales rooms that frequently don't get into writing onto agreements. So make sure that everything that you talk about and everything you understand is in writing in the agreement, the contractual agreement. And my recommendation is once you see a copy of that agreement, go see your lawyer.
Right.
Go see someone who has an idea about this contractual relationship, someone who deals with strata properties and real estate conveyances on a regular basis, who can instruct you as to what the future status is. Because we certainly see complaints that occur where, we thought we were getting this. Somebody wrote down on our agreement
Right.
that we had parking space 56 and 57, and that's all it said. Well, there was no lease on the parking. There was nothing else. It was common property. It just simply said we were going to be using parking space 56, 57, which ultimately means the Strata Corporation might change that. We may not have 56 and 57, and we might not have 2 parking spaces. We may see the Strata adopt a bylaw down the road that says 1 parking space per Strata lot, and additional parking spaces are available. Strata corporations can also rent additional parking spaces as a user fee. They create a rule or a bylaw, so they have additional parking where they have user fees available for people who want additional parking.
To have that
within
second
buildings.
car tucked away.
Well, and it's the way I think that Strata corporations try to strive for a level of fairness.
Okay.
Right? Everybody gets 1 parking space or 2 parking spaces. Additional parking spaces for those who seek additional spaces are as follows. The difficulty with the assignment of parking, at the first annual general meeting of the Strata Corporation, the owner developer is obliged to give the Strata Corporation a list of all the parking assignments.
Oh, okay.
So any parking assignments that were done.
And these would be conducted or arranged during the selling of the units phase.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. They're obliged to maintain this. They're obliged to convey this over to the Strata Corporation as part of all the records and documents at the first AGM. But that seems to be where something weird goes on, because I've yet to see an actual parking assignment that lists, or a parking list that lists all those assignments, go on to the Strata Council. So even if there are assignments and leases and these types of relationships assigning parking, the Strata Council, and we find within a period of 2 or 3 years, nobody has this information. And so now it's a real mystery as to how did these parking spaces get assigned. And then you end up with subsequent purchasers, right? We just go from the first to the second purchaser. And the first buyer.
If it wasn't clear for the first person, chances are the second person doesn't stand a chance.
Well, and think when you're evolving down to 5 or 10 subsequent purchasers,
Sure,
odds are, well, it will get contorted, it will be confusing. How do you know that these are actually the parking spaces? Just because it's on a sales agreement that says, I have parking spaces 56, 57, doesn't mean it's true. Right? That's one of the reasons why we're seeing a change in the information certificate, so that the designation and how parking's allocated is going to have to be disclosed by the Strata Corporation.
Right. Now, Adrienne, Tony's talking about the importance of making sure that what you think you have agreed to is in fact exactly what you've agreed to, and you have it in writing, and is recommending, for example, that you retain the services of a lawyer to review the agreement before you sign it. I'm thinking at the prices that are being asked for these units anywhere in Metro Vancouver, absolutely you're going to get a lawyer to look at it before you commit to that kind of money. But you have this look on your face that suggests not everybody does. So what percentage of people say, oh, I know this, I have done this before, here, where do I sign? What percentage of people just take that kind of pass on legal advice?
Let me say, I've been practicing in this area for 13, 14 years.
Okay.
I've had 2 people ask me to review a contract.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just not done. And so when you think about I
find that astonishing.
Yes, people are spending and making the biggest investment likely that they will ever make in their lives. And they're not taking the time to have the contracts reviewed. Now, having said that, if you've got a licensed realtor that understands the issue, they can work through a lot of these details for you. But remember, what usually happens in particularly a purchase from a developer and a pre-sale is that you're buying from the developer's employee.
Right.
Not even from an agent. There's nobody there looking out for your interests at
right.
all.
It's a sales rep.
It's yes. So you add that to a mix of no realtor and no lawyer, and unfortunately, mass confusion very often.
Wow, on that somewhat staggering factual note, I'm going to need a second to catch my breath here, Tony. That's dazzlingly dumb. I can't believe it. This is Quay Pacific's Talk About Strata. Tony Gioventu and Stirling Fox joined by Adrienne Murray, and we'll be right back.